It's a lot less painful. Believe me, our world is a lot less painful than the real world.
Tom Ford is the director of 2016's underrated Nocturnal Animals. The fashion designer turned director uses his experience in the fashion world to create a movie inherently about image. But not in the fashion sense, so we're not talking about looks, but rather perception.
You both have the same kind of sadness in your eyes.
What?
You and your mother.
From Susan being like her mother, according to Jake Gyllenhaal's Edward Sheffield, and himself being called weak by Amy Adams Susan Morrow, the perception of someone is always under scrutiny, and it is defined by their actions.
If your daughter thinks I'm a rapist, then she gets raped.
We get to see the world of Susan Morrow. The high-class living standards tell us she is not relatable to the normal masses, but she herself is not relatable to even those who are her equal. The simple Texas girl overshadowed by the exuberant life that swallows her up. She is alone in this big world of hers. She has a daughter who lives away, a husband that cheats, and a job that makes her unfulfilled. But in her life she finds comfort in a book sent to her by ex-husband Edward Sheffield, a book that opens deep wounds that may never have been explored again. One of her assistants, shocked to hear she even had an ex-husband, shows us how closed off she is. A book dedicated to her is a way to tell us that Edward clearly is hurt by her actions towards him, so much so that the book has parallels of their relationship. Edward calls Susan like her mother, someone who is bigoted and of high maintenance, who sees Edward as not Susan's equal and calls him weak. And as the movie progresses, Susan is shown to call Edward weak too. The insistent use of weak towards Edward is shown to be a character trait of the character of Tony in the book.
You're too weak.
And as Tom Ford once said in an interview, you write yourself. During the book, the character of Detective Bobby Anders implies Tony to be weak. The detective makes a sly comment about the three criminals not having a gun. He never states anything else, but the way Bobby Anders looks at Tony is an indication of him thinking of Tony as weak. During the book, we witness Tony lose his wife and child, another parallel to what Susan had done to Edward. Susan, his wife, left him and then had an abortion. This is why Susan sees Edward as Tony. As she reads the book, she remembers the awful acts she has done to him. So it isn't a surprise that Tom Ford casted Isla Fisher to play the wife of Tony in the book, because she is such a resemblance of Amy Adams. Susan sees herself in Tony's wife. Edward Sheffield is clearly writing out of experience. His time with Susan is an inspiration for his story. But what does that say about Edward and his book? I see the book as his way of expressing how much he has been hurt by the way Susan acted towards him. Susan clearly feels bad for what she has done to Edward.
Horrible to him, something unforgivable.
But the book is a way to put Susan in his shoes, so she can feel the pain he feels of losing a family. Just as Tony feels comfort by killing the one who took his family away, Edward does the same by not giving Susan the satisfaction of meeting him. He is dead to Susan as the family he pictured with her is dead to him. Tom Ford decides to interchange from three storylines: past, present, and the book. This decision creates tension throughout the movie because each moment of past, present, or the book hands in nicely with each other, which plays very well in sympathising with Tony from the book, because Edward and Tony are so alike. Seeing the life of Edward plays out as backstory of Tony. This makes the story of Tony more tragic because in a sense we are getting a backstory to Tony by seeing the past life of the writer, Edward. A very controversial moment in the movie is its opening credits. Obese women jumping and dancing naked. And with a movie that involves death and rape, the opening credit is the controversial one. What does that say about the audience? At first I thought it was a comment about how desensitized we are with violence, but when it comes to naked people, it makes us uncomfortable. But that isn't the case. What Tom Ford is commenting about is image, the perception of people. At first glance, we see these obese women as unattractive, because this is what society tells us. But their actions tell us a different story. They dance, smile, and have fun. They don't care what society says. To them, they are beautiful. But instead, it is those who are inspecting them at the art gallery. They are the ones disconnected with society, just like Susan is with her life. And so I bring back the quote from the beginning. They are free, while Susan's being who she thinks she needs to be.